Elena Casas. Hello, Elena. Now, of course, the French papers you were telling us earlier had a lot to say about Gilad Shalit's release yesterday. Britain's independent newspaper, it's looking more at the prisoner swap from the perspective of Gaza.
Well, they've got that same emotional photo that lots of the French papers had on their front page of Shalit being reunited with his father. But inside, their correspondent in Gaza points out that some people in Gaza were reunited with family members they hadn't seen for far longer yesterday. Some of those prisoners released had been in Israeli jails for 25 or 30 years. So the correspondent in Gaza talks about scenes of indescribable joy that he witnessed as one man, for example, saw his 13-year-old daughter for the first time. There were, of course, also Hamas militants out yesterday among that seething crowd in Gaza. There's a really good picture in The Guardian, if we could have a look at that, of Hamas militants riding on horseback, carrying big flags through that crowd. And that does show really how they're being celebrated by Gazans and how this is really being portrayed on the Palestinian street, at least, as a big success for Hamas.
There are concerns, though, that this sets a dangerous precedent, and Hamas has even said some people have been calling for more kidnappings of this kind.
Well, staying in the same paper, The Independent, they've got an article by a former Israeli diplomat who actually says that maybe this proves that we should talk to terrorists. Lots of governments, the British, for example, say that they would never talk to terrorists who capture their citizens. But he says Shalit is among a number of people who would never have been released if the government hadn't been prepared to talk to terrorists. So maybe there's something other countries can learn from this. But he says that as an Israeli, he's proud that this deal took place, but on a very different perspective. There's a very different article in Haaretz which says that actually this has brought shame on Israel, this swap, because Israel, of course, has great pride in its army, and the army was unable to rescue Shalit on their own. They had to resort to this deal-making. So Haaretz thinks it's embarrassing for the nation.
Now, moving on, recently there was a high-profile conference on ending violence in the Basque region, and it's widely rumoured that ETA might be announcing it's going to be putting down its weapons. That's at least what the delegates were calling for. Spanish paper El País is quite cynical about this, though.
It's still not good enough unless the group disbands completely. That's what one editorial in El País says today. They say there's a lot of political convenience going on here. The ETA, well, its former leaders at least, are keen to announce that they have renounced violence in time for the 20th of November general election, so they can put themselves behind a legitimate pro-Basque independence political party and go out looking for votes. The ruling Socialist Party, according to El País, also see an electoral advantage in this. They want to be shown as having negotiated an end to ETA, and they hope that will win them some votes in a general election they're widely expected to lose. But the editorial there says they should never have negotiated with terrorists. So interesting when you look at Gilad Shalit, that rather different perspective. One question for you now, moving on to another story. How is your art history?
Normally I'm the one asking questions. Not very good.
What about Vincent van Gogh? How did he die?
He killed himself, didn't he?
Well, not according to a new book. They reckon, the authors of this new book, that he may have been accidentally killed by two young men who might have been playing around in a cornfield with a gun and shot him by accident. Now, that's been in lots of papers recently, including in The Guardian, but their art critic, Jonathan Jones, gives this new theory pretty short shrift. He says that this would mean we'd have to look at all of Van Gogh's later paintings in a different light, because, of course, they're quite dark and brooding, and critics would normally say that proves he was in a suicidal state of mind. But Jonathan Jones says he's read Van Gogh's late diaries, and they really are so bleak that it's pretty easy to believe, rather, that he killed himself because they're so low. One other question, actually. I'm going to keep asking you questions today. It's a quote. Do you know who said famously, "I'd rather cry in a Rolls Royce than be happy in a bicycle"?
No.
It was Patrizia Regani. Now, she is the ex-wife of the multi-millionaire Gucci founder Maurizio Gucci, and she was jailed in 1994 for arranging a contract killer to shoot him, apparently because the €500,000 a year allowance that he gave her, wasn't enough for her. Now she's made the headlines in Italy and in The Guardian because she's become eligible for parole, but one of the conditions was that she get a job. But she's staying inside, actually, for the time being, because she told the parole board, "I've never worked in my life, and I'm not starting now."
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I wish, I could say the same, but no, we're going to keep on working here at France 24. Thank you very much, Elena Casas, for that look at the international newspapers. A reminder now of our top stories. A two-day general strike gets underway in Greece. Unions say the fresh anti